Most men are walking through interactions completely blind to what's actually happening beneath the surface. They think they're doing everything right, being nice, being available, being agreeable, and they can't understand why it's not working. Why attraction fizzles, why respect evaporates, why they're constantly being tested and found wanting. The truth is brutal. There are psychological needs so fundamental that when they're unmet, attraction dies regardless of how many boxes you check on paper, and almost no one is meeting these needs because almost no one even knows they exist. These aren't the obvious things. These aren't the things people talk about or admit to wanting. These are the deeper psychological mechanisms that operate below conscious awareness, the actual architecture of desire and respect that most men never see because they're too busy following advice that only addresses surface-level preferences. Understanding these needs doesn't just make you more attractive. It makes you functionally irreplaceable because you're providing something that almost no one else even recognizes as necessary. And once you meet these needs, once you understand the psychology that most people stumble through blindly, everything changes, not through manipulation or tricks, but through genuine understanding of what creates lasting attraction, respect, and devotion. The need for emotional challenge. Women need to encounter resistance in the emotional realm, a presence that doesn't simply absorb and accommodate every mood and impulse, but instead provides pushback, creates friction, demands reciprocity. Most men operate from a place of emotional servitude, believing that being endlessly accommodating and understanding signals strength and care. In reality, it signals the opposite. It signals that you have no emotional boundaries, no center that cannot be moved, no standards for how you're treated. This unlimited accommodation creates a psychological vacuum where respect should live. The psychology here involves understanding that humans value what they must work for and devalue what comes too easily. When you provide endless emotional accommodation, when you're always available for emotional processing, when you absorb negativity without limit, you're creating a dynamic where your emotional presence loses all value. You've made yourself abundant rather than scarce, common rather than valuable. The relationship becomes a place where emotional indulgence has no cost, where moods can be deployed without consequence, where your stability is taken for granted as a resource to be exploited rather than appreciated as a gift to be honored. Emotional challenge doesn't mean being cruel or withholding. It means having boundaries around your emotional energy, having standards for reciprocity, being willing to withdraw when treatment doesn't meet those standards. It means you don't rush to soothe every upset. Don't immediately accommodate every mood shift. Don't allow yourself to become the emotional dumping ground with no expectation of mutual care. This creates a dynamic where your emotional presence has value because it's not unlimited and unconditional. The emotional experience of encountering genuine emotional challenge is initially frustrating, but ultimately deeply attractive. It signals that you have a life, priorities, emotional needs of your own that matter as much as hers. It demonstrates self-respect that commands respect from others. It creates the push-pull dynamic that maintains attraction over time rather than the one-directional flow that breeds contempt. When someone realizes they can't manipulate you through emotional displays, can't secure unlimited attention through mood alone, they must actually engage with you as an equal rather than treat you as an emotional appliance. Most men fail at this because they've been taught that being emotionally supportive means being emotionally unlimited. They confuse boundaries with coldness, standards with cruelty. But the men who understand emotional challenge, who maintain their center while being genuinely caring, who provide support without becoming servants, create a psychological dynamic where their emotional presence is precious rather than presumed. This preciousness is the foundation of sustained desire, the need for unpredictable depth. There's a specific psychological need for discovering layers, for ongoing revelation of depth and complexity that was hidden at first encounter. Most men present themselves as fully knowable from the start, laying out everything they are in the desperate hope that it will be enough. But this complete transparency eliminates the exploration, the discovery, the ongoing revelation that keeps interest alive. Humans are drawn to mystery not for its own sake, but because mystery signals depth, signals that there's more to discover, signals that full understanding hasn't been achieved. The psychology of unpredictable depth involves revealing yourself in layers over time rather than all at once. It involves having interests, thoughts, capabilities, experiences that emerge gradually rather than being advertised immediately. It involves occasionally surprising someone with perspectives they didn't expect, abilities they didn't know you had, depth they hadn't yet discovered. This ongoing revelation creates the sense that they haven't yet exhausted who you are, that there's always more to find. Most men operate from scarcity mentality, where they fear that if they don't show everything immediately, they won't be chosen. So they front-load all their value, display all their qualities, reveal their entire hand in the opening. This creates the psychological equivalent of reading the ending first. There's no journey of discovery left. Everything that could be learned has been learned. The relationship becomes about maintaining what's known rather than discovering what's unknown. The emotional experience of unpredictable depth is fascination that compounds over time rather than fading. Each layer revealed suggests more layers beneath. Each surprise creates the expectation of future surprises. The person becomes a continuous source of interest rather than a quickly exhausted novelty. This ongoing fascination is what separates relationships that deepen from relationships that plateau and decline. Creating unpredictable depth requires actually having depth. Interests you pursue for their own sake, thoughts you develop independently, growth you're committed to regardless of relationship status. It requires not performing your entire personality up front, but allowing it to emerge organically. It requires being comfortable with gradual revelation, trusting that sustained interest beats immediate impression. It requires the confidence to let someone wonder about you, to not fill every silence with self-disclosure, to maintain some internal privacy that creates the sense of unexplored territory. The need for competent dominance. Women need to encounter someone who can take charge in a way that feels secure rather than controlling, who can make decisions without needing permission or validation, who can lead when leadership is needed without either tyranny or uncertainty. This is not about dominating a person. It's about being dominant within yourself. Having clear direction, making decisions decisively, taking action without endless deliberation or need for approval. Most men either abdicate this entirely, endlessly seeking input and permission for everything, or overcompensate into controlling behavior that stems from insecurity rather than competence. The psychology of competent dominance involves the deep security that comes from being with someone who can handle responsibility, who doesn't need to be managed or directed in basic functioning, who can take ownership of outcomes without being paralyzed by anxiety or offloading decisions onto others. This security is not about traditional gender roles. It's about the primal relief of not having to be the only adult, the only one who can make decisions, the only one with direction and agency. Emotionally, the experience of competent dominance is relief combined with attraction. Relief that you don't have to manage another person's basic functioning, that you can relax your own control sometimes, that someone else can take the wheel when needed. Attraction because competence is fundamentally attractive, because seeing someone operate with clear purpose and decisiveness triggers respect and desire in ways that hesitation and deference never do. Most men fail at this in one of two directions. Either they're overly deferential, constantly checking for approval, unable to make decisions without extensive consultation, turning every choice into a committee meeting. This creates the burden of having to manage them, of being the only one with agency, of essentially parenting an adult. or they swing to controlling behavior, making unilateral decisions that affect others, confusing dominance with disregard for input, becoming tyrants rather than leaders. Both extremes kill attraction for the same reason. They reveal insecurity rather than demonstrating competence. True competent dominance means being able to take charge of yourself completely, your direction, your decisions, your actions, while respecting the autonomy of others. It means you can lead when leadership is needed without waiting for permission, but you're also secure enough to follow when someone else is better positioned to lead. It means your decisiveness comes from clarity rather than fear of appearing weak. It means your direction comes from knowing what you want rather than trying to control what others want. The need for selective vulnerability. Women need access to genuine vulnerability, but only when it's offered selectively from a position of strength rather than dumped constantly from a position of weakness. There's a fundamental difference between strategic vulnerability that deepens connection and chronic emotional dependency that creates burden. Most men either refuse all vulnerability in misguided attempts at stoicism, or they overshare constantly in desperate bids for intimacy and validation. Both extremes fail because they don't understand that vulnerability is valuable precisely because it's rare and chosen, rather than constant and compulsive. The psychology of selective vulnerability involves understanding that emotional openness creates connection only when it's coming from someone who isn't generally open to everyone about everything. When you're discriminating about when and with whom you're vulnerable, those moments become gifts rather than burdens. They signal that this person is special enough to be trusted with your internal world, that you've chosen to reveal something you normally protect. This choice creates value and intimacy that constant oversharing destroys. Emotionally, encountering selective vulnerability from someone who is generally strong and self-contained creates a powerful combination of trust and attraction. Trust because you've been chosen as safe enough to be vulnerable with. Attraction because the vulnerability confirms that the strength is real rather than a facade. You're seeing the full human being who has struggles but handles them, who has fears but faces them, who has wounds but doesn't make them everyone else's problem. Most men misunderstand vulnerability in dangerous ways. Some think they should never be vulnerable because it signals weakness. They become emotionally unavailable, refusing to share anything real, creating distance that prevents actual intimacy. Others think they should be constantly vulnerable as proof of emotional intelligence. They turn every interaction into therapy, processing every feeling, seeking constant emotional support, making their inner chaos everyone else's problem. Both approaches fail because they don't understand that vulnerability without strength is dependency, while strength without vulnerability is disconnection. The art is being genuinely strong and self-sufficient most of the time, while selectively choosing moments to reveal your humanity, your struggles, your fears to someone who has earned that trust. This creates intimacy without burden, connection without dependency. It allows someone to see the real you without making you their emotional responsibility. It demonstrates that you're a complete human being who can handle your own emotional world while also being willing to share it with someone special. The need for unreactive presence. Women need to encounter someone who cannot be emotionally destabilized by their tests, moods, provocations, or manipulations. This unreactive presence is not coldness or emotional unavailability. It's unshakable centeredness that remains calm regardless of external emotional turbulence. Most men are extremely reactive, allowing their emotional state to be determined by the emotional state of people around them. They absorb moods, respond to provocations, get destabilized by tests. This reactivity signals that they have no center, that their emotional state is dependent on external circumstances, that they can be controlled through emotional manipulation. The psychology of unreactive presence involves developing such strong internal equilibrium that external emotional turbulence doesn't move you. You can witness someone else's emotions without taking them on. You can be provoked without being triggered. You can be tested without becoming defensive. This steadiness creates a profound sense of safety and respect because it demonstrates that you cannot be manipulated, that your stability is real rather than performance, that someone can have their emotional experience without destabilizing you. Emotionally, encountering genuinely unreactive presence is both frustrating and deeply attractive. Frustrating because it means normal emotional manipulation doesn't work, that you can't control this person through mood or provocation. Attractive because it signals a level of emotional mastery that most people never achieve, because it creates safety to have your own emotions without it creating a crisis, because it demonstrates the kind of stability that allows genuine relaxation and trust. Most men fail at unreactive presence because they either suppress their emotions in unhealthy ways or they're completely overwhelmed by the emotions of others. They swing between stone-faced detachment that's actually suppression and emotional enmeshment, where they take on every mood around them. Neither approach works because both stem from not having done the internal work to develop genuine emotional sovereignty, the ability to feel your own emotions fully while not being controlled by the emotions of others. Developing unreactive presence requires deep work on emotional regulation, on distinguishing between empathy and absorption, on being able to witness others' experiences without making those experiences about you. It requires the security to let someone be upset without immediately trying to fix it, to let someone test you without becoming defensive, to let emotional storms pass without being swept up in them. This quality is rare enough that when someone encounters it, they often don't want to let go of the person who provides it. The need for genuine mission beyond the relationship. Women need to be with someone who has a compelling purpose or mission that exists independently of the relationship and would continue regardless of relationship status. This is not about neglect or making someone feel unimportant. It's about the deep attraction that comes from being with someone who has direction, who is building something, who has priorities beyond just the relationship itself. Most men either have no real mission and make the relationship their entire purpose, or they have goals but abandon or subordinate them the moment a relationship begins. Both approaches fail because they create dynamics where the relationship becomes everything rather than an important part of a full life. The psychology behind the need for mission involves understanding that people want to be chosen by someone who has options and alternatives, not by someone who has nothing else going on. When you have a genuine mission that you're committed to, when you have work that matters to you, when you have a purpose that gives your life direction, the relationship becomes something you choose to make time for rather than something you need to fill your emptiness. This choice feels completely different from being someone's entire world because they have no world without you. Emotionally, being with someone who has genuine mission creates pride, attraction, and security. Pride that you're with someone who is doing something meaningful, who is building something, who has value beyond just the relationship. Attraction because purpose and direction are fundamentally attractive qualities, because watching someone pursue their mission with dedication triggers desire and respect. Security because you know this person isn't dependent on you for their sense of meaning or identity, that they chose you because they want you rather than because they need you to complete them. Most men either have no mission at all beyond making money to survive, making the relationship their primary source of meaning and identity, or they have missions but sacrifice them when relationships begin, thinking this sacrifice demonstrates love. The former creates suffocation and pressure as someone becomes responsible for another person's entire sense of purpose. The latter creates resentment and loss of attraction as the very qualities that made someone attractive, their drive, their purpose, their commitment to something bigger, get abandoned. The reality is that having genuine mission makes you more attractive and creates healthier relationship dynamics. It means you have something you're excited about beyond just the relationship, that you're growing and evolving, that you're interesting because you're doing interesting things. It means the relationship enhances a full life rather than being expected to be the full life. It creates natural balance where you're invested in the relationship without being consumed by it, where you make time for someone because you want to rather than because you have nothing else to do. Understanding these needs doesn't guarantee any specific outcome with any specific person. What it does is ensure that you're operating from genuine understanding rather than blind guessing, that you're building attraction through psychological depth rather than tricks and tactics, that you're meeting real human needs rather than performing behaviors you think you should. The men who understand these needs and genuinely embody the qualities that meet them don't struggle with attraction or respect or sustained desire. They struggle with having more interest than they can reciprocate, with maintaining boundaries against people who recognize how rare these qualities are. Because when you meet needs that almost nobody else even recognizes exist, you become functionally irreplaceable in ways that have nothing to do with manipulation, and everything to do with providing what humans actually need at the deepest psychological levels.